One of the biggest and the best things about Modern Warfare is the gun customization, and it seems that no matter what you think of the game, most people have the consensus that the gunsmith is one of the best things ever introduced into a Call of Duty game to date, and possibly one of the best gun customization features in any first-person shooter game out there. It's spot on. There's so many cool and wacky ways to kit out your gun, some of which are less than stellar, but then there are others who completely change the gun, who stand out amongst the rest and sometimes even turn the gun into an absolute monster. Which leads me to talk about my favorite sidearm, and in my eyes the best secondary in the game, the 357 Magnum, and more specifically the 357 with the Snakeshot ammunition equipped, and this is my guide for just that. For this guide, I will be covering the 357 only with the Snakeshot in mind. If you came wanting a complete overview of the gun itself, then you'll have to look elsewhere, unfortunately. The Snakeshot attachment, for those of you who do not know, turns the revolver into a shotgun essentially, a pocket shotgun if you will, with the gun firing shells instead of single little bullets. Now with this guide, I'm going to be diving into attachments and combos that work with the Snakeshot equipped. It's basically going to be a pocket shotgun guide. So let's go ahead and dive right into it with what most of you probably want to know right off the bat, which is the one-shot kill ranges and the barrel attachments. The 357 has 3 different barrels to choose from, with each shot firing 8 pellets in total. The base barrel has a decent one-shot kill range, which actually surprised me. Now I know this gun was nerfed a while back, and it almost seems like they brought the range back up for the one-shot kill, because I specifically remembered testing the nerfed range, and it was basically barrel stuffing range for the base barrel. If anyone feels the same way, let me know in the comments, because I'm almost positive that they stealth buffed the gun up from the previous nerf, but it still isn't quite as strong as it was. But onto the other barrels, the snub nose, as you would expect, lowers that one-shot kill range by a little bit. It's not a huge decrease, but I have noticed it made this gun a little bit more of a headache to use than it should have been, and it was just getting some weird inconsistencies I didn't really like. The Silverfield Ordnance barrel seemed to have a one-shot range very similar to the base barrel, but in my testing it seemed like it actually had a little bit of a shorter one-shot kill range. I'm not sure if that's a bug or intentional, but it doesn't really seem to make this gun any better despite giving you a range increase. My personal choice of barrel, and in my opinion the one you should always run, is the 357 long barrel. The one-shot kill range is significantly better, and if you can land those pellets, and it really definitely helps the gun out. The long barrel does penalize your ADS time more than I would like, which I'll get into in the ADS section of the video, and it also hinders your movement speed. And as you can see here, it is slower, but considering it is technically a pistol, you're already going to be a little bit faster than most guns already, so adding the long barrel and being just a little bit slower is a worthy trade-off in my opinion. The other barrels don't seem to function quite as well as the long barrel does when I use them in-game, so whenever I equip the Snakeshot attachment, I almost always run it with the 357 long barrel attachment. Now onto our sprint out times. So when it comes to sprint out times for the 357 with the Snakeshot attachment, the results may surprise you, and honestly they disappointed me when I found out more about them. The base 357 sprint out time is 13 frames or 217 milliseconds. As a pistol, this seems like a bit on the slower side to me, but I thought to myself, no worries, the green laser in the grip will definitely give it a nice little boost to help get me on target faster. Well, the 5mm laser, one of only 2 attachments to boost sprint out time, took it down to just 12 frames or 200 milliseconds on its own. I tested this many times to see if it was an error in my programs, but I kept getting similar results. This is not a significant boost at all, and that really diminishes the usefulness of the 5mm laser in my opinion, since the trade-off for that bright green laser showing was the fast sprint out time. Of course, it does tighten your pellet spread when you're hip firing, which I'll cover more in the laser section, but the biggest bonus of the 5mm doesn't seem to really give the gun much of a buff here. The stipple grip didn't have any significant impact on sprint out time at all, and I was repeatedly getting 13 frames, which is the same as the base sprint out time. What this means is that it's either the same, or since everything for me is capped at 60 frames per second, the difference was so small I couldn't really measure it accurately. The 5mm laser, along with the stipple grip, took it down to a whopping, get ready for it, 1 frame from the base sprint out time, putting it at 12 frames or 200 milliseconds, which is the same as just the green 5mm laser on its own. So even when stacked, the fastest possible sprint out time I was able to get with all these attachments on at once was 12 frames or 200 milliseconds. Just as a reference, the sprint out time for the Origin 12 shotgun, decked out, was about 8 frames or 133 milliseconds. So I don't know, maybe this was done for balancing since it's a secondary, but I was still disappointed to learn about this. For the next section, we're going to take a look at the ADS times, or aim down sights times, excluding the optics, and there are many different attachments here that will affect your aim down sights time. We'll start with the base aim down sights time, which is around 14 frames or 233 milliseconds. Now, because this gun functions basically like a pocket shotgun, there are some attachments which I just don't consider necessary to run. Some of them may help you out, but overall there are some attachments I find to be much more important than others. For example, attachments that help with recoil or aiming stability aren't really that necessary to equip on the gun, since you won't be going for extreme long-range precision, and you won't have to be as precise since it does have the spread of a shotgun. With that being said, if you are curious, here is a comprehensive list of every single attachment that affects aim down sights time for the weapon and how much it helps or lowers it. Looking at this list and based off of what I just explained, let's take out some of the attachments that won't be as needed to run, which gets rid of the muzzle attachments and some of the rear grip attachments, and let's take a look at what we have left. The snub nose barrel lowers your aim down sights time to 13 frames or 217 milliseconds, which is not a huge difference at all. The silver field ordnance bumps it up to 15 frames or 250 milliseconds, so it basically gets 1 frame slower than the base barrel. The 357 long barrel bumps it up to 17 frames or 283 milliseconds, which is definitely slower than the base aim down sights time, but it's still not that bad, especially when you see how much better the long barrel is for this gun. The stippled grip tape brings the aim down sights time to about 12 frames or 200 milliseconds, which is a nice boost, unlike how it didn't affect sprint out time at all really, and considering the other options for grips not being as useful, this grip in particular is definitely a go-to of mine. Then last, we have the tack laser, which is sitting at around 13 frames or 217 milliseconds. I did try to make a class with the fastest ADS time possible for this gun, and that was with the grip, the tack laser, and the snub nose barrel, just for fun really, and I ended up getting it to about 10 frames or 167 milliseconds, which feels lightning fast to me, and it's really snappy. Overall, the aim down sights times are pretty quick, so you probably won't have that much of a hard time getting your shots on point quickly. When you're kitting your gun, just remember that attachments do stack, so if you want a fast aim down sights time, make sure to go easy on the attachments that really hinder your aim down sights time, like optics, which I don't really recommend for this gun. At this point in the video, I would normally go into the muzzle attachments, but seeing as how they aren't particularly useful, I'm going to go right ahead into the grip section. We have in total 5 different grips to choose from for this pistol. Most of them affect recoil, aiming stability, aim down sights time, aim walking speed, and things like that. But for the Snakeshot revolver, ADS speed is definitely the most important factor to use besides sprint out time as a basis for grips. And the only attachment that helps aim down sights time is the stippled grip. The stippled grip took the aim down sights time of the base 357 with Snakeshot down to 12 frames or 200 milliseconds from 14 frames, which does make the attachment capable of boosting your aim down sights time the most, even over the tack laser. It does say that the grip helps with sprint out time, but as I already mentioned, I couldn't really find a significant difference in sprint out times, and so my result was basically just the same as the base sprint out time, or maybe just a very minor increase that I couldn't record from frame limitations. Despite this though, the stippled grip is still useful to run on this gun, and I do recommend it, mostly for the good aim down sights boost it does give you. Moving on to our laser section, we have 3 lasers to choose from. The 1mW red laser, the 5mW green laser, and the tack laser. The 1mW laser does not affect your sprint out time like it normally does on the shotguns, but instead affects only hipfire spread. As you can see, it does tighten up your hipfire spread by a little bit compared to the base spread. The 5mW green laser tightens pellet spread significantly when hip firing, but it also bumps up your sprint out time to 12 frames or 200 milliseconds, which is a 1 frame difference, which isn't a huge boost like how most guns get a noticeable boost to sprint out time with it on. The only redeeming feature for this laser is the tight pellet spread in my opinion. The very small boost to your sprint out time and the fact that your laser is going to be so visible to other players makes it difficult for me to want to choose this laser anymore. I'd much rather use the red laser for a tighter spread, or even the tack laser to get another aim down sights boost, rather than using the 5mW laser here. The advantage it gives is really just too small for me to want to be able to use it now. With the tack laser, it does boost your aim down sights time by 1 frame, taking it down to 13 frames, but of course the laser is visible when you're aiming. So overall, there really is no clear-cut winner for the lasers here, but if I had to pick one to use, it'd probably be the red 1mW laser so that I can get a small buff to my spread without having to expose myself for a somewhat decent reward. But all lasers have their place here. And I'm not saying don't use the 5 mW green laser, I'm just saying be careful when you choose, because that green laser does give you away quite a bit, and for me personally, I like to aim down sights as much as possible, so it really doesn't affect me that much considering the sprint out of time buff isn't that great. And just remember for that 5 mW hip laser that the laser does disappear when you aim down sights or when you are sprinting. For this next section, I'm going to go over the perks, and more specifically just the Sleight of Hand perk, because since this is a revolver, we do have to mention the reload time, because usually a revolver has a slower reload time than most weapons. Thankfully, the base reload time isn't that bad, clocked in at around 2 seconds with an effective reload cancel. Sleight of Hand will take that down to 1.18 seconds if you can get that reload cancel down. Remember, you don't have to wait for the reload animation to finish. As soon as that number in the bottom right goes back up to 6, you can double tap your switch weapons button, or you can sprint for just a second and you will be ready to fire again. It's a useful perk to run, and it's definitely worth looking into if you want to run this pistol as your primary weapon just for fun. Now we're going to move on to the trigger attachments, because another important factor in kitting out your Snakeshot revolver is the fire rate. The base Snakeshot 357 has a fire rate of about 119 rounds per minute. It's a pretty slow firing gun, and that makes sense since it is a revolver, and you also want it to be balanced. We have 3 trigger options to choose from: the lightweight trigger, the heavy duty trigger, and the match grade trigger. Both the lightweight and the match grade trigger increase your rate of fire, while the heavy duty lowers it. Since the Snakeshot does not really require much aiming stability or recoil control at the distance you should use it, we'll only look at the rate of fire for these triggers. If you want the fastest trigger, the lightweight trigger is the option for you. It bumps up the rate of fire to 157 rounds per minute, or around a 30% increase overall, which is actually a really nice boost, and you can definitely tell. One important thing to remember is that you can oversample with this gun since it is a semi-auto. What that means is that if you were just spamming the trigger as fast as humanly possible, you might get more of a stutter when you shoot, as opposed to pacing your shots and getting that timing down. It actually lowers your fire rate a little bit if you're pressing the trigger like crazy. So pressing the trigger as fast as you can is definitely a habit a lot of people have, and it's good to remember to slow it down and pace your shots, or it'll hurt you in the end. The match grade trigger bumps it up to only 146 rounds per minute, so it's only 23% faster, and on top of this, it does take away some of your hip fire accuracy, which makes the pellet spread just a little bit wider. So the lightweight trigger is the best choice for triggers in my opinion, since it only reduces aiming stability, which again isn't that necessary for the Snakeshot attachment. There is really no need to bother with the heavy duty trigger since it lowers your rate of fire by about 8%, and the perks aren't really that great for the Snakeshot version of the gun. So if you are running the 357 with Snakeshot, I do recommend getting that lightweight trigger for the fastest fire rate possible. We have now finished covering the attachments for the gun and the effects that they have on the 357. Up next, I wanted to go over a best class setup that I believe is one of the best ways to run this gun. Keep in mind, you can change things up as you like, but for this class, I'm going to be focusing mostly on long-range one-shot kills with some mobility. First, equip the Snakeshot, obviously, the lightweight trigger, the stippled grip tape, the long barrel, and the 1 milliwatt laser. This class has a sprint out time of 13 frames or 217 milliseconds and an aim down sights time of 14 frames or 233 milliseconds, which is the same as the base aim down sights time. The only attachment that you can probably get around with changing up is the laser. The lasers are all close to the same level, and so you can kind of switch those up if you want, but I found that the red 1 milliwatt laser is my go-to for overall balance. The Snakeshot 357, it's a really fun gun to use, and even though it isn't as strong as it used to be, it's definitely a formidable secondary and can still do some major damage in the right hands. It can be inconsistent at times, as any of the other shotguns minus the 725, but I still think it's a top tier pistol secondary to run. Before I jump into the channel update, I do want to say that currently the Snakeshot attachment is bugged in custom matches. You may have noticed this, but for some reason every other shot that comes out is only 1 pellet as opposed to 8. I'm not sure if it's sort of like a slug or rather if it's just one individual pellet on its own, but it doesn't seem to have any effect on the damage from what I can tell. So maybe it's more of a graphical bug, but it's something small I wanted to point out that does need to be fixed. It's not game breaking, but strange to say the least. Now we are at the end of the statistics part of the video, so if that's what you came for, I appreciate you sticking around and watching up to here. As always, I wanted to give you guys a quick update on what's to come on my channel. I will probably be uploading a video on the Master Key Shotgun attachment next, which probably won't be that long of a video since there isn't really that much to cover, but I thought it'd be nice and fun to do anyway. After that, I'm really open to suggestions on what gun I should cover next. I'll probably do the HDR sniper rifle, but also we're getting close to season 2, and so I will be covering those new guns as soon as I can for you guys. I'm also thinking of other ideas to implement, and I've been asking you all here on YouTube, so keep throwing ideas out there and I'll be sure to jot them down mentally. If you guys are new to my channel, be sure to subscribe because I'll be making more guides like this along with other videos, and follow me on my Twitter, which I will link in the description so I can keep in contact with all you fine ladies and gents. And with all that out of the way, I wanted to wish you guys a happy rest of your day/night, and I will see you in the next video.